Good morning. Happy Tuesday. I don't know why. It feels like it's later in the week than it is, but it's Tuesday. Happy Tuesday. It's an exciting day today because yesterday here in Scottsdale we had our first monsoon storm, and those are always a lot of fun. So it rained pretty heavily. I think it probably rained well over an inch at our house here in the desert, and we had lightning and thunder for hours, and it was a delight. Everything's a little cleaner, a little cooler. I'm gonna post a video on my Instagram of some of the storm last night, but it's a new day. It's like that always brings in a new season here. With that, I have a topic I came across the other day, and it kind of interested me, and I'm guessing it may interest some of you. And what it is, it has some analytics on Zoom meetings, and not only the frequency and length and how many people participate, really citing the evolution of our meetings since the pandemic. But more importantly, towards the end, I'll talk about what signals employees are telling you when they mute their phones for the entire time or they're off camera. And I'll provide some statistics on retention based on those signals. So, kind of interesting. Let's get into it. Now, let me just say straight up, I think one of the biggest opportunities in our industries, those being real estate and mortgage, is that we need to have more meetings. And you go, what the heck are you talking about? Well, you know what I'm talking about is the problems we face today are bigger than ever. And the opportunities that come along with it are also large. But we have to rise to the occasion. We have to get better. We have to deliver more value. We have to get better with our words. We just have to become much more valuable. And one of the ways that we can teach and we can share value is through meetings. And so I'm personally, I hate meetings. Don't have a meeting that doesn't have value, right? And I've always had a thought that, look, if nobody shows up to your meeting, it's because your meeting is bad. It's not that you shouldn't have the meeting, it's that your meeting is bad, your content is bad, your delivery is bad, your meeting structure is bad. Instead, when you see signals of people not attending, people coming in late, people not participating, check yourself first. Did I have a good meeting? Did I earn everybody's time that was in that meeting, right? And were you prepared? Did you have content? Like that's super important. So as I talk about meetings right now, I don't want anyone to believe that I'm going to advocate fewer meetings because that's not what I'm advocating. I'm going to advocate better meetings. In fact, I will probably do one of these Facebook Lives on meetings. But for now, let's just go with the data shows us from Zoom meetings. Okay, so since the pandemic, there has been, we are now doing, makes sense, 60% more meetings online than before, right? So let me back up. Since 2020, we've increased the amount of meetings we have every week by 60%. All right. So in 2020, the average employee had to attend 5 meetings a week. Today, that number's 8. So we've gone from 5 meetings a week to 8. Now, our average meetings are shorter. They've decreased by 25%. They've gone from 43 minutes on average in 2020 to 33 minutes in 2022. So we have more meetings that are shorter, right? And then our meetings by and large are smaller, meaning fewer participants by half. In 2020, the average meeting had about 20 employees in it. Today, the average meeting has 10. All right, so we have 60% more meetings, it's 25% shorter, and there are only half as many people in attendance, right? But what's interesting, the number of spontaneous meetings has absolutely skyrocketed, and so unscheduled or spontaneous meetings have gone from being 17% of the meetings that employees used to attend to now over 66% of the meetings that employees attend. And many of these are one-on-ones. And I questioned when I read this, is it spontaneous meetings, or is that just people using things like MS Teams and Zoom for phone calls? For example, at my office, at my work, and you know this if you work there, I always start by reaching out by somebody on MS Teams on a video call. I always video call first. And it's only if I can't get a hold of somebody do I then try to call them on their cell or what have you. But so I wonder if the authors of this paper are equating a video call to a meeting because they're calling it a one-on-one. So I somewhat question this. And by the way, when I say the authors of this paper, I'm referring to the paper in the Harvard Business Review titled "No Remote Employees Aren't Becoming Less Engaged." By the paper was written by Andrew Brodsky and Mike Tolliver. So that's what I'm referring to. I'm going to refer to another Harvard Business Review article in 1 second. But here's what we talked about. More meetings, they're shorter, fewer people are attending, and then we have more spontaneous meetings. Now, it begs the question, do we need this many meetings? Are these meetings effective, right? Because like I said, I'm a huge believer in meetings, but if you've worked with me, you know that I won't go to a meeting if I don't know what the agenda is, and I certainly won't stay in a meeting if it doesn't have any value, right? It just drives me bonkers. But I love a great meeting, and I try to host really good meetings, right? Now, here's one first statistic we're going to get on signals. For employees who left, the people that turned over, that left the company, they had 67% fewer spontaneous meetings than their peers. They attended 22% fewer scheduled meetings, and they had 20% fewer group meetings. So and this is the first tip, right? If you're a leader, if somebody you lead stops to participating in meetings, whether they're spontaneous, scheduled, or group meetings, it is a signal that they may be ready to leave. So pay attention, right? I'll read that statistic again. So employees that leave did 67% fewer spontaneous meetings, so 2/3. So they weren't interested in just spontaneously meeting to talk about something. They attended 22% fewer scheduled meetings. So if there's a meeting every Monday, they skipped every fifth one, and then they attended fewer group meetings. They started to disengage. That kind of seems obvious, right? Here's probably more important statistics, and this also comes from a Harvard Business Review article, and its title is "Hybrid Work Has Changed Meetings Forever." This article is by Erica Bellini and Beth Schwarting. And this has some really interesting analytics in it, one that we can take to heart. So, pre-pandemic, almost 78% of our meetings were face-to-face, right? Because we weren't really using Zoom pre-pandemic. Maybe we were with our clients, but we didn't really use Zoom so much for our work meetings. So, the vast majority of meetings were face-to-face. And then meeting frequency, as we mentioned, at the end of 2021, employees attended an average of 8.3 meetings per week. So they attended 8.3. And we know that number was only 5 in 2020, but at the end of 2021, it was 8.3. By the end of 2022, it was 10.32. So we increased the frequency of meetings by 25% a week. And then in 2023, it stayed flat at 10.1. But we've seen this increase from 2020 to 2023, essentially going from 5 meetings a week to 10 meetings a week. And I question, do we need all those meetings? Knowing I'm an advocate for a good meeting, right? But here's the part that we have to start really kind of paying attention to. There's going to be two different phrases we're going to pay attention to. No participation is one, and non-camera usage is the other. All right, and this is where I think this gets super interesting. So 7.2% of attendees to meetings, virtual meetings, 7.2% didn't participate, as defined by never turning off their mute, right? So they were on mute 100% of the time, 7.2%. Now that's up from 4.8% in 2022. So to get the numbers, roughly 5% of people in virtual meetings never said a word, were on mute the whole time in 2022, and it went up to over 7% in 2023, or almost a 40% increase of no participation, right? Now, this number is skewed to be low because if somebody gets on a meeting, says hello, good morning, hi Bob, I'm here, check, whatever, says one word in the meeting, that's counted as participating. It's thought that if you were to include the people that only said one word or one sentence into the non-participation rate group, it'd be over 30%. So pay attention to that. But the participation rate, it speaks to meeting fatigue, but it also speaks to disengagement. And so what happens is that the people who are leaving your company, the non-participation rate is nearly 10% versus people who stay, which is 7%, right? And so if you see somebody continually not participating, they could be sending the signal they're leaving the company, right? Because we know that people that leave disengage and don't participate as much. And so you can start watching your Zoom analytics or whatever forum you use to see who's participating and not participating, right? Who's speaking, who's not speaking, who's turning on and off their mute. And you can start to, create an algorithm that tells you that somebody's at risk for leaving. And then, of course, you can also start to get in front of that by trying to get engagement with that employee, whether, through virtual meetings or however you can start to coach them engagement, because lack of engagement leads to turnover. Now, the same interesting thing holds true for camera usage, right? And, it's always a question, should I have my camera on? Should I have my camera off? I'm of the belief that if you don't have your camera on, you shouldn't be in the meeting, personally. That's my belief, and I've often had meetings where somebody wasn't on camera, I just invited them to leave. Because if you're not going to participate, you're not going to be present, why be in the meeting? And if we can't see you, if we can't connect with you, we can't interact with you, if I can't see whether you agree or disagree or how you're accepting the information, it's really not that, productive of a meeting. But here's some statistics, right? Now, when people turn off their camera, it could be they're disengaged, could be, once again, meeting fatigue. But here's what we know. Workers who are leaving a company, those ones that leave, right, have their cameras on only 18% of the time. So they have it only 18% of the time. Why people that stay, compared to the peers, people that stay, the number is around 35% of the time. Way too low. Like I said, if 35% is not sufficient. But think if you have an employee that constantly is off camera and they're muted, you have an employee that's going to leave the company. You have an employee at high risk. That's what the statistics say. That's why this is so interesting, right? What can we learn? Now, some of this could be, once again, you have people that are not engaged in meetings because you have bad meetings. Like you have bad content. It's not interesting. They're bored. They're multitasking, right? So that's the first question. You got to ask as a leader, how's my content? How's my delivery? Is it worth having this meeting? Then second, you have to look at individual statistics and go, hey, Bob is constantly not engaged and he's not on camera. And gosh, now I come to think of it, he's not returning my phone calls. Well, that's a signal, right? And if you want to retain Bob, you got to get in front of the signal. You got to use the signals he's sending to try to, save him and retain him. And so interesting. And then once again, are you having too many meetings? If you can do one, I believe meetings are critical, and I believe that it's an absolute lost art form that leaders don't know how to run good meetings, and that they don't work hard enough to have a impactful meeting. But that the people they lead are desperate to be poured into, and one of the ways you can pour into them is via a meeting. And the best leaders have more meetings, right? If you look at our industry, the best leaders have a team meeting every morning for like 15 minutes or 30 minutes every single morning, right? They're checking in with their team about what's happening, what's important, what are the problems, what are they get in front of, how can they get better, all that type of stuff every single day, right? In my opinion, bad leaders have no meetings because it means they're not a leader. If you never have a meeting, how are you leading? Osmosis. You got to have meetings, you got to have one-on-ones, you got to do all that to be a good leader. Now, here's a few things wrapping up this topic, and hopefully you guys enjoyed this topic. I actually posted these articles. If you go to my LinkedIn this morning, I think early around 7 o'clock, I did a summary of what I just talked about. I listed the key points, and I attached links to both of these Harvard Business Review articles in case you want to use them, share them, reflect back on them. But here's our takeaways. One, if you're leading a virtual meeting, make sure you encourage participation. Make sure that you're encouraging people. I would make it the standard. You have to be on camera. I would reset your standard. You got to be on camera. Sorry, you got to be on camera to attend this meeting, right? So make sure they're on camera. Make sure that you're interactive, that they're commenting. Now, always make sure that they're commenting in the chat. Do online surveys. Do things that engage people during the meeting so that they're active. Of course, get rid of unnecessary meetings. That goes without saying. You have to also foster a culture of engagement. You have to set the standard and expectation that no matter what format we're having the meeting, we want to have interaction. We want to connect, and we want it to be collaborative. And then, of course, monitor your meeting participation. Like, pay attention. I know we do that on our meeting. I know our CEO specifically spends most of the time in our meetings looking at everybody on camera to read their body language to see how they're doing, how they look. Do they look healthy, happy? And he reaches out to them through the meeting and goes, "Hey, how are you doing? You know, you look like you have low energy or whatever." He's very sensitive to how people respond and react to our meetings, and he's super sensitive to comments and engagement. And we do a review after every meeting to talk about engagement. So anyway, that's analytics, some feedback, that's comments from on Zoom. Hopefully you found them interesting. I appreciate everybody that takes a peek at this Facebook Live. I continue to appreciate every day I get a trickle in of more encouragement and feedback. I love the feedback. It helps me get better. I know I'm enjoying this. I hope you have a great day. I will be back the same time tomorrow. Thanks so much. Talk to you soon.